a weekly newspaper distributed primarily in the Denver area. They have a pretty big circulation. They are the second or the third largest newspaper in the Denver area, and they've been around quite a while. And they write on unusual subjects. They have a very clever use of the language and the words and descriptions and adjectives and that sort of thing. I kind of think as a newspaper, a lot of times they're really a hoot. And I thought as they wrote us up, they might do what a lot of others have done, which has been to ridicule this type of program. If you remember a few years ago, they wrote an article about the organization meeting in Fort Collins, in which they said anybody who attended that meeting should be in a home somewhere, and not their own home, at an institution. But this article is remarkably accurate and remarkably favorable. I'm surprised at it. It is this much is what they've written, about half a page, and it's about our upcoming meeting, of course. And if the fellow who wrote it called me and interviewed me over the phone, and he wrote a remarkably accurate quote of what I told him. So we're going to try to get a copy of it for all of you, if we can, or find them someplace. There are thousands of them around the town somewhere, because it comes out on Tuesdays. So, and then it lasts until the next Tuesday. Now, one more time, I will ask for silence in the rear. I've got to do this, John. Can you hold it a minute? Can you stop it? Still too much noise back there. Please. I want to explain this. This mic isn't very strong here. We've been talking about animals. Randall Eaton was to be the speaker next. His wife somehow rode one of their horses into a steel corral pole and mashed her leg up against that pole 2 days ago. So it's been touch and go whether he would be able to be here. And as of noon today, we were told, finally notified, that he was not able to be here because they have an acreage and they have to take care of a lot of things, plus her. So Dr. Randall Eaton is not here because of that reason, because of an accident that happened, and we will possibly know the reason for that at a later time. We are fortunate to be blessed with a wealth of material, and we have a number of former or current speakers available on a standby basis. And so today we're going to do the next two in 30-minute segments. The first one will be Randolph Winters on his latest book, and as I say latest, its copyright page reads August 10, 1999, so I think you'd say it's a pretty current book. And his study lately, he has been, as a number of you know, and he's been with us over the years, and studying and researching UFO activity in Switzerland and with Billy Meyer and a whole lot of things, and has done a tremendous amount of work in that area. We have steered in a little different direction this time, and I'll let him tell you about it. And he will be given a half time, and then we got the three fellows from Australia who came here just to tell us about their new technology after him. So we'll get right on with it. So will you welcome Randy Winters as we proceed right now.
Thanks, Dane. Hi, everybody. They let me out of the home for the weekend so I could come to Global Sciences. So it's always a pleasure to come here. I told Dean, I called him about a week ago, I've been home typing for several weeks, and I was just kind of like, when you got a whole bunch of stuff in your head and you're just like busting, going to talk to somebody about it. So I'm picking on you guys. You're the first people I'm talking to about this. So I've kind of taken it upon myself here to write a new book. I'm concerned, like everybody else is, about where we're going as a country, what our government's doing, and what we as a people are, going to try to do. Because, I've been speaking for about 20, 25 years, and I remember back in the 70s we were talking, the predictions are about where we were going to be like at the turn of the century and what was going to be happening. And now we're living, unfortunately, we're getting ready to live through all these big problems that we've known were coming towards us for a long time. We're seeing a tremendous squeeze by the powers above. And as a population, as a society, we're running headlong into some problems that are becoming quite obvious that other speakers have mentioned also. Overpopulation really couldn't be much worse. We're getting ready to hit 6 billion people here any day. Our population is increasing at the rate of 8,800 people an hour. And at the rate we're going, when we hit 6 billion, at that point, most people seem to agree we're already running out of resources to feed these people, take care of them. Most all the paradigms that keep our planet in order are going to start falling apart, too much strain on them. Do you realize how long it's taken us to get 6 billion people? Well, that's been over 100 years. Well, guess what's going to happen in the next 9 years? That 6 billion will double to 12 billion people. And the stress that will put on our atmosphere, on pollution and whatever, is going to lead to those plagues, viruses, and bacteria and so forth we've all been hearing about in Revelations for a long time. Not to mention, as many of you are probably aware, scientists have been studying for quite a while, following the oxygen in the atmosphere. We see stuck in trees from hundreds of years ago, the oxygen content used to be 38%, high enough to get rid of almost any disease. People could live for long periods of time quite healthy. How many of you have any idea where our oxygen rate is right now? It's between 19 and 21% on the average. Now, at 17%, they tell us people will probably start falling in the streets because their immune system will start breaking down. So it's becoming a far more serious problem, than people need to shrug off, because the government really isn't doing much of anything about it. Because most of all the things that they've set in motion over the years to take control of things and make money, they want more taxpayers. They want us sick. So none of these things really fall in where they want. I was in Washington, D.C. a couple of years ago, and I was wandering around late at night one night, and I happened to go to the Jefferson Memorial, and they were painting it, and there were some workmen there, and the place was shut down. And I was kind of sorry about that because I wanted to go downstairs and wander around in the library and read some of the old historic papers. But the guy painting it, after talking to him for a few moments, seeing that I was no great threat and wasn't there to damage anything, says, "Hey, come on down, I'll open up the doors for you." So he went downstairs and he opened up the locker downstairs where they keep all the memorial papers, and it's full of stuff. And in a plastic bag in there were some copies of old papers written by George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin and so forth, all back during the days when they were fighting to trying to get a nation together for us. And I remember that night I picked that package up, and there was nobody there to pay or anything. So I think I left a $5 bill or something on the counter and took these 3 or 4 sheets of paper, these notes. And I went out on the steps. It was about midnight, at the steps of the memorial, and under the big light there, I was reading this. And it was not an essay, but it was a kind of report on the day that they decided to sign the Declaration of Independence. There was 56 of them getting together that day, and they had a couple of other issues to do. They had to do something about muskets. They were appropriating musket balls or something they had to vote on, and a couple other things that were minor. And then today was the day they'd all agreed to sign the Declaration of Independence and serve notice on England that they weren't going to put up with the economic oppression any longer. Well, they had their meeting that day, and then John Hancock stood up, took a deep breath, says, "Hand me that thing." He signed it. He says, "There, I'll go first because there's a $500 price on my head. That'll surely get raised at least to $1,000. And he signed his name extra large and said, "This is so the king doesn't have to use these glasses to read it." Benjamin Franklin stood up next and says, "Well, they're probably going to hang us all. Let me sign that thing." And he signed it. All 56 of those men lined up and signed the Declaration of Independence, which was serving notice on the king that they were not going to put up with the economic mess any longer. England was still controlling them through trade, controlling their money. They had no rights. People were literally being shot in the street if they didn't go along with what they told them. It was pretty tough times. Well, history records that those 56 people, all of which were fairly well off and enjoyed wealth and so forth in their own private lives, what do you suppose happened to them? Well, as soon as their names were on the Declaration of Independence and the king read it, of course, that was his list to go get them. The ships were sailing into the harbor almost as the ink was drying on the document, and over the next couple of years, all 56 of those men lost their fortunes. Many of them were shot and killed in the street. Many of them saw their families beaten, their children killed right in front of them. Many of them got shot, wound up in prison. They all pretty much lost their entire way of life. But none of them gave up. They all believed in the principle of what they were fighting for. And basically what they were fighting against was the wealthy financial people of Europe, if you remember your economics, for years and years have wanted to control the world through trade. It's a fairly simple system. If you're wealthy, what you really want to do is you don't want to be bothered with having to be the mayor or the governor or the president. That's too much trouble, and you got to take too much flack. It's much easier if you control the trade of the world. The trade of the world, the commerce of the world, is all controlled through what? Money, the money system. So, hey, if you can control the money system of a country, you've got a lock on the trade thing, and you can remain invisible in the background and control things with your own pressure and power, and nobody really knows who you are. Well, that's what was going on in early America. We beat the English, so it says in our history books, we won the War of 1812, but we didn't really win very much. Those papers said that, one of the papers I was reading said that after the war was over, the smoke cleared, and we officially were waving our flag and declared our independence, we secretly had to agree to pay the king 600,000 pounds in English money for damages to his ships and to his military. They weren't even going to let us off the hook. And we agreed to do that just so that we could get some trade agreements because we had no industry in America. They still controlled the trade. So they let us go about our own way, thinking that we were going to have our own free country and do things, but even our forefathers had to give in. It says in the notes that they had to make so many concessions, they were so embarrassed about it, that they all decided for 50 years they would not let the minutes of those meetings out to the general public so nobody would know how much they had to bend over and give way to the crown just to get us a country. So there was a lot of pain involved, and now look where it's led us. Those papers also warned us about what are called moneyed companies, which have become the corporations of the day. If you're rich and you don't want your name known, if you're a Bauer, a Schiff, a Habsburg, a Rothschild, and the other major families or royal families of the European community that don't want to be known, you want to own things without anybody knowing about it. And that was the original purpose of the moneyed companies. Send your lawyers, your barristers over from England, and as the companies of the United States were being formed, our big Fortune 500 they eventually grew to be, most of them were funded and secretly and privately owned by the wealthy people of Europe, and for the most part they really still are. It's just hard to tell it in many ways. So what's happening today? What have we got? Well, we're getting hit pretty hard with taxes, aren't we? The first 150 years you lived in this country, off and on anyway, we printed our own money. We had no debt. We had no taxes. We went through 7 cycles back and forth of printing our money and then having a central bank, they call it, owned by the wealthy of Europe. Eventually in 1913, the wealthy won out and established what you all know as the Federal Reserve Bank. And I'm sure you're all quite well educated on that, but for those who might not know, it's actually not a federal property at all. It has nothing to do with the federal government. We do now put at least 2 board members on the 7-member board, but we don't own it. We are buying our money from the Federal Reserve. That's where the major part of our debt really comes from. We have a $5 trillion debt right now. The most of that is in Treasury notes and other things. The problem with this is this debt system that we have, and really is kind of the major outlying problem of all of our problems. In the debt money system, I'll give you a quick overview of how it works. Let's say you guys decide to run into the bank tomorrow and you're going to go to a major bank and you're going to buy a house, and you go to some big large bank. You sit down, fill out your papers, they say no problem, sign your loan, you've got your loan. Well, how do you think your mortgage gets paid off? How's the mortgage the construction company that built the house going to get their money? Most people still think that our currency in our pocket is our money. It's not. Paper money has so long been so worthless it's not even considered money any longer by the Federal Reserve. It's just paper to pick up just to accommodate the banking machines. So what is real money? Real money is your checking book money, the checking account money, which is no longer has anything backing it. It's just computer digits. When you apply for that loan at the bank, let's say it's $100,000, you go home, you're happy, you got your paper signed, you're going to go get your keys tomorrow and pick up your new house. Well, that night, a piece of paper from the bank where you got the loan goes into their computer, zaps over to the Federal Reserve and says, we need $100,000 in money to take care of this new home mortgage that we're going to put out. Federal Reserve computer receives it, looks up your bank's account. That bank is allowed to have 10 times its deposits in loan money. It's called fractional reserve banking. Okay? Computer goes off in the Federal Reserve sometimes in the middle of the night, and $100,000 in computer digits slam into the bank's account. It's got its $100,000. Once that hits, their computer goes into action and sticks it in the account of the construction company or whoever it is they have to pay off, to get you a free house. The point is that money, which in the past has been rocks, stones, oranges, cows, sticks, and everything else, today has evolved into being computer digits. Now, the Federal Reserve didn't have to walk over there with gold, with paper, with anything. It was just a computer digit. The point is, it's good to be the Federal Reserve because you didn't have to come up with anything. The money literally was just created on a computer. And that's really the basis for most of our problem. Well, over the past year or two, I've asked a lot of people privately about what they know about our government, or what do you think our problems are, or how we're going to fix it. And I found out, unfortunately, like many of you people probably can second guess, that most people really don't have a clue what's going on. And in the front of my book, I was thinking about that, because the real reason I'm writing this book is not so much for you folks, because most of you are fairly well educated, but we have millions and millions of people out there that don't have a clue how anything works. And the reason they don't vote, the reason they don't get involved, is they just don't understand what's going on, and if they did, they don't have a clue on anything what they could do about it. So I was sitting there and I started typing the book. The first thing I wrote when I decided to write this book was thinking about them, and these were the first words that I hit on the screen. It says, most Americans find themselves standing on the side of the political road with their minds lost in a fog of disinterest and confusion. What they see are speeding politicians and bankers racing down the fast lane of our lives with pollution and smut pouring out their tail ends, allowing nothing to get in their way. Their reckless driving smashes through barriers of principle, runs over our gardens, wiping out nature's best work, and leaving a trail of debt, poverty, sickness, broken schools, oil slicks, violence, useless laws, and creating a low consciousness that bleeds the ambitions of our young. Now man slowly turns his head toward the new millennium and says, what are we going to do? Well, most people really don't have an idea, and I don't know that I've completely solved it, but I've got about 10 minutes left, so let me run through basically 15 minutes, getting better, okay. A few ideas that I have how we can turn it around. These ideas are based on the fact that if we could actually get a good man in office, one that's not controlled by political parties, that doesn't have his agenda already laid out for him, there are a number of things that we could really do. So let me run them over briefly and give you a general idea of what I think we ought to do. It's no surprise at all to any of you. The first thing we have to address is the money system. If we're going to have one planet, one people, it's going to come together by being able to equally share all the resources of our planet ultimately. Do you realize that over 3 billion of our 6 billion people make less than $1 a day? Even in the United States, the poverty line is now $16,000 a year. We have over 23 million people living in this country that are almost dying of poverty, of starvation, of malnutrition in the United States. So, we have a very small percentage of people really enjoying, most of the wealth. I laugh when I hear Bill Clinton come on television lately and talk about how great the economics are and how well we're all doing. Well, I don't know what planet he's on, but basically the statistics show that for the most part, our paychecks, ours, working class people, are down about 30% from where they were a few years ago. It's been replaced with credit cards, which we're all deeply in debt. The average family owes almost 1 year's salary on credit, so that's not a very good thing. So we're really going kind of in the wrong direction. My idea was, and consider that perhaps if you were elected president, these are the ideas that I would hope that you might follow through on. To begin with, we obviously have to shut down the Federal Reserve and start our own central bank. Certainly not a new concept. We have done it 7 times in this country already. There's not even any point really in talking to Alan Greenspan or discussing it with Mr. Rothschild or Rockefeller and see if they agree. We just repeal the law and open the United States Bank and begin to issue our own money. Since primarily $5 trillion of the debt, $3.5 trillion of it is all treasury notes and monies owed to debt money that we've gotten from the Federal Reserve. So we will just inform them, we will pay it when we get to it, and we will distribute our new money, which we're going to start printing up tomorrow. We'll pay them with the new dollars, and they can just like it or lump it. They really don't have too much choice because we can also control the banking. The banking people, for the most part, if you stop and think about it, can you really think of any reason why we even need banks? Just kind of keep track of your paychecks, about it really, isn't it? 100 years ago, we hardly used them at all. Companies used to grow off of profits, off of earnings. But it's the moneyed companies, the corporations, that have made banking a huge industry because they wheel and deal, they buy their profits, and they merge to get more volume and more business and so forth. They're twisting the system, so to speak. So once we have control of our money, we're going to start reprinting our money. That'll be our first step. We'll take over the 12 reserve banks. We will now call them United States Bank, and from now on, all of our member banks will receive money from us. We don't even really have to charge them interest, do we? There's not much point in it. So we could supply our new American money to all of our banks for nothing, really. Nothing backs the money anymore. It hasn't for a long period of time, so we can set our own standard and have our U.S. bank. Now our U.S. bank can have as its assets the collateral and assets of the United States, our gold reserves, our mineral reserves, our property, and so forth, also our gross national product. Once we have control of our money, the first thing I would do, the next thing I would really do, would be to step right out and beginning to revamp our health, education, and our welfare system right away. I think it's time we take education, health, and the general welfare completely out of the economic system. There's no reason why our schools should not be built and run as good as our minds are capable of making them. There's no reason why our health system should not be able to do the things that are necessary. We all know that the system we provide now, for instance, does not allow cures on the market. Pharmaceutical companies currently are selling 223,000 different pharmaceuticals all over the world. They list in their catalogs. Recent polls by the FDA, how many of those 223,000 pharmaceuticals do you believe that even the FDA will admit are really important and relevant to our society? Indispensable, they caused it. How many? 26 of them. All the rest of them have just been hustled. Hardly any of them have ever been tested except on animals, which has nothing to do with people. Let me give you a quick example of one of the problems, for instance. Here's something that you may think is still a pipe dream off in the future, but in a private laboratory in Texas, a scientist working on genetics has solved some of the problems of aging and our future problems, which will eliminate pretty much all of our health problems altogether. He has invented what he calls a bio-machine. It is a natural part of our body already that is lying dormant. He has woken it up, and it is a small microscopic device that is intelligent. You can shoot a small stream of them, basically 1/100th of a millimeter into your body. It has the intelligence to go into your body, race through your body, making connections, scanning every cell, and it rejuvenates and repairs any cell tissue and returns it to its full maturity. Here's what it looks like. This is the first bio-machine ever created. Now, if the FDA and the pharmaceutical people have their way, you'll never hear about this again. After my talk, if you want to, you can come back to the table. I'll tell you more about it, but I want to try to run through some more of these ideas. We will fix the school system, the education system. We can fix our health system because we all really know how to do it if we just put our minds to work. There's plenty of good plans. The most important part of it, though, really is the education system, because we are, as a country, how we are raised. We have to take a much greater interest in how we raise our children and our people. This is why we're running headlong into being a violent society, because it's all based on law. It's all based on force. It's not really based on people. It's not based on our feelings, our emotions, or our concerns. So it's very, very important we get to work on the education system and change the school system. Once we have control on the money, once we begin to turn the education system around, we'll be raising different kinds of people. We can offset some of these terrible statistics of 55% of the kids born into homeless homes. We are the leading world supplier of abused children, sick children, children with no self-confidence. They show up at school with all sorts of emotional problems. These things are easy to fix if we direct our attentions to them. So those are the sort of things that we would really have to do next. There's a number of other things I've got down here. There's 10 basic points that I think that really should be done. We'll have the health care reform. We have to set about fixing up our cities for sure. I think it's time we redesigned our cities in smaller communities. We need to get rid of big cities because we're learning now how environmentally they are trashing they're polluting our environment, they're ruining the way we live, and socially they don't work well. It'd be much better if we re-engineer our cities, be more of an environment to enhance the spiritual existence of the individual. It'd be very nice if we all lived in rural areas, everybody had about 5 acres of land, and the middle of our cities were primarily entertainment and education centers that were free to everybody, where you could go and learn and study. I think it's even about time that we tackle these spiritual problems we have on the planet. We can't have 150 different spiritual leaders all threatening their followers to do it their way or else. It's about time that we open that up and diffuse that by having open spiritual knowledge to our young and let them learn and let them naturally find how to live with respect and love with all life forms in nature. It's a very simple thing. Most of you were probably raised that way. We need to, of course, change our trade rules. A lot of these things I'm going to have to skip because I don't really have that long to go into it today. The other major thing we need to do to lock the wealthy people out of our country and regain it is to change the business laws. We are really controlled via corporations these days. You only have to look around your own city and see it's almost impossible to have a family business or a private business any longer. The only businesses they'll let you have are the ones they don't want. Everything controlling the main flows of money, corporations have taken over. I think it's time we reverse all of these laws that lawyers have said about in courts for years and cancel out corporations. We could have, we could have one type of corporation, which I call a B corporation, because I think it's time that we end stocks. Stocks twist and kind of change the natural flow of supply and demand. They were designed by the rich to get around the problems of making any money in a company and get ahead of a normal, well-run business. But what we can do, since businesses can raise money, why don't we create a business bond? If you have a company and you need to raise money to do something new, you can sell a bond, just like any other bond, which guarantees the person a return on it. You've raised the money. There's no gamble in the investment. It eliminates the stock market. People will no longer lose. And then every time Alan Greenspan speaks or the market drops, your paychecks and your jobs at the corporations you work at are no longer in jeopardy. Your benefits don't go down, and the corporation doesn't threaten to fire you until they get their profits back up. If you sit down and really think about it, I have almost 20 pages in there on how to change the business system, how to redo the companies, and how to get rid of the corporations and change the legal structure so we can do it. It's a very important part. Once we cut them out of the banks, cut down on the banking, if we raise people's paychecks because we'll no longer have income tax, there won't be any purpose for it any longer because the government won't really have to take the money out of your pockets, think about what happens. Your money will go up. You'll have extra money in your pocket. Just like we did in the 50s when mom didn't have to work, when dad only worked one job and we got by just fine. We can return to that so the family unit becomes important. This helps the mother raise the children much better, and we don't have near as many problems in our society. Your paycheck will almost double if you don't have such a huge mortgage payment on your house, because most of the payment you're making is interest, which will disappear. Your car payments will go down. Your paychecks will go up. Money will become more prevalent in our society. Consequently, the quality of our products will go up. Then we won't have to be using all of these made-in-America junk products that fall apart on you by the time you get them home. I still remember growing up in the 50s when made in America meant something, and we laughed at anything made in Japan. My, how things have changed, huh? They really twisted around on us. I know I'm kind of racing through a lot of this, but the point I want to get to also is once we have repaired our own country, once we have stabilized it, changed our transportation system, taken money out of the system. Money should not be the relevant issue of our lives. Money should not be the force that's running us through our days all of the time. Once we take money out of it, we can start what I call a contribution economics. It's time to reward people for all types of contribution to community and to our country. Take, for instance, a school teacher that might do an extra really good job of raising children. Well, why don't we award that person, say, food for life? Why don't we give them extra benefits or take care of them in other ways? So money's not always the issue. We're all living in a lifestyle right now where everything is money. It controls everything that we do. We shouldn't be doing that. And we have the problem of the third world, which is really not living at all in the same kind of thinking capacities that we are. Once our country's in balance, let's head south of the border as an example and take one of the third world countries, Mexico. We could go to Mexico and do pretty much the same pattern. We take their banking system and shut it down. They're also controlled by central banks. Shut their central banking system down also and let them become part, so to speak, of our system. We can then go into their system and follow the same pattern, start putting money into their economy. The average Mexican person makes about 90 cents a day. Well, we can raise that by start putting money in and rebuild their schools, because the key to really bringing the third world up so we all live in equality is education of the individual. They have just as much aptitude as we do, and with the proper education, they will grow up more well educated, they'll have more self-assurance, they'll have more respect, and we no longer will have the prejudice and anger that exists towards the third world. Mexico can be a wonderful example of how, following normal reasoning and doing things for the right reasons, they would rise up to our level economically, they would rise up to our level socially and economically, and things would change quite a bit. Then one by one, other countries would fall in line. The banking system then can be controlled easily by our own new World Bank, which does nothing more than audit the computer digits to make sure nobody's cheating, that's all, and to make sure the money goes in the right directions. You see, I have really an awful lot of faith in mankind being able to do a much better job than that we're doing right now. And I've just got a few minutes, so I'm going to close with a little thought I have in here. Oh, by the way, I didn't get time to explain to you. I've pretty much rewritten the whole structure of Congress and changed it. I'm kind of getting rid of the Senate. And it occurred to me, I went to Congress to see what the heck is going on. If you really knew, and if I had time to explain to you how they're passing bills and arguing and doing everything with the legislation, then you would understand why it's no wonder nothing's getting done. We're going to change the House of Representatives to committees. 25 basic committees. Each committee specializes in one particular facet of our life, health, education, whatever it may be. We will then get rid of the party system, have open elections, and each state will elect of their wisest, of their best to that particular committee. Imagine if the House of Representatives was 25 committees of our wisest and most knowledgeable people in each area and endeavor of our life. And they alone now took care of the legislation for that particular type of problem. In other words, the Committee on Health would be the only people dealing with it. They don't have to go down the hall and trade off with other committees with special interest. They don't have corporations writing their legislation and telling them what to do. And there's a few other things I'm going to do with Congress, too, that they won't like either. But primarily, it becomes a wisdom system. You see, my idea or my dream really is a vision for peace on our planet, is that once we raise the individual to his highest level of understanding and let him come in contact with his own spiritual connection with everybody around the world, we can then tap into the resources that are all among us, and we'll have a much better world. So let me, in closing, kind of read you one more little short paragraph here that says this. When we want to solve the problems of our world, let's look at it this way. Let us ask the dreamers of the world to create a vision of the perfection of humanity, for it is they who command the tools of imagination and can change the smallest thought into the grandest plan. Then find the artist who can turn the dream into the images that will inspire us and fill our hearts with desire. For theirs is the power of inspiration that can fill our minds with the passion to rise to our greatest potential. Then show this fine work to our educators who can teach us how to make it happen, for they have the understanding of knowledge that will bring us together in a common mission of human growth. Finally, we stand united behind our wise elders who provide the leadership and experience to guide us to the completion of our task, for they have the purity of heart that will ensure that we create a new future for mankind that is based on the wisdom of education, not the force of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Randall. When you give him 30 minutes, he can really get going, can't he? No, no. We is now having rewired, but he will be available. He'll be around here, and he's going to offer a workshop too. I know people would love to ask him questions, but to keep on our time schedule and let you finish on time, the next speaker is a member of the three-person committee or group that came from Australia, and we call them our own men in black. That's the way they dress. And so I want you to, he's from the Q-Tech laboratories there. We have to get this right. And explain what they have in the way of the technology that is of help to mankind. His name is Terry Scoringa, and he comes from Toowoomba, which is Eastern Australia. So his name is Terry. We want you to make him feel at home. So will you join me in saying good day, Terry? 1, 2, 3. Good day, Terry.
Oh, don't do this to me. Oh, this is a frightening concept, getting up in front of so many people. Oh, how's that? Oh, this might stay. Oh, it's not going to work. There it is. I might have to hold it. Okay, it's been a long time since I've actually got up in front of people and talked, and I've never got up in front of this many people. But I'll give it a shot anyway and see how I go. Okay, first of all, I'd like to explain a little bit about our company and what we do. What we are is a group of people that have got together, not out of company need or anything like that, but out of a familiar understanding or need for technology, for something new, for something that's not available, for something that people just don't have. So what we have done is we've developed particular products along particular lines. One of the main products we've dealt with, one of the main angles we've dealt with is health. Now, what I've got here is one of our little devices we call the BEFI unit, or Bioelectric Field Enhancement Unit. It's designed to actually emulate the same type of power that your body runs on. So what it effectively does is it acts as a human battery charger and recharges your entire body. Now, a lot more detail on this can be found down at our table. I won't sort of take that away from the boys. Okay. To give you a little bit of a storyline on how we started, I have to go back in history a little while, in my history. First of all, I started off at age 16, where I was caught for hacking into American Laser Systems Corporation in America here, from Australia, and for getting into their military top secret section and downloading lots and lots and lots of good little stuff. Well, I got caught, and luckily I wasn't imprisoned or anything like that because A, I was a little too young, and B, they didn't have any legislation passed at that stage for computer piracy or fraud or anything like that. I was a little too young in the field. So what they did is they confiscated all my equipment and banned me from getting online for 5 years. This didn't stop a great deal. Now, that led on in about 18 months after that. I had my first contact with the Australian government. A certain branch of the government, which is known as ASIO, contacted me, well, not actually contacted me, walked up and knocked on my door at home and wanted to know if I wanted to do some contract work for them, doing computer stuff, creating viruses. So I did that, and I did worse things than that as well. And that led on to military, getting into military intelligence as a civilian contractor, doing, well, things to computers, and setting up computer systems for them, setting up subsystems in those computers so that they could keep tabs, etc. Getting on to the next stage. After doing this, I made a few friends in the field, in those fields. Now, they had, well, they were privy to certain information, certain places, certain locales. And I was lucky enough to be taken to a few of these. One of them was a research facility at where they had some rather strange and unusual artifacts. And to cut a long story short, it was off-world technology. They asked me to decrypt it, to utilize the way I think, the way I function, the way my mind works, to puzzle it out. And it took a whole really, really, really long time of about 5 minutes to figure out what they'd been trying to do for about the last 6 months. All in all, I laid my hands on about 6 or 7 different devices, different items. Now, this got them thinking, and they thought, well, okay, he thinks a little different. Why? Well, they never got to actually answer that question because I rebelled pretty heavily. I didn't like the idea of being under someone's control and not having any ways out. So I used my friends to create a buffer zone, the friends I'd made in those fields. So knowing some very low people in very high places does work. And I got out of it. And, well, out as far as out can be. Now, a little later on, Stephen Walker, who's one of our directors, he was doing a lecture tour, a lecture circuit in Australia for Professor John Searle, who does research in anti-gravity and space flight. Now, another member of their party, which was John Thomas from New York, I'd been in contact with for about 8 years previous, with certain designs and specifications. Well, like for instance, this here is a book called Q Mechanics. Now, it's got some pretty strange symbology on the front, pretty strange things, which I will explain, not here. I will explain on Monday when I do a workshop. They talked me into doing one. But in the back of the book here is basic schematics. I'll get to the right page sooner or later. Basic schematics for an energy system that I devised when I was about 4 or 5 years old, scribbling around. And I developed it up further and further and further throughout the years. I got kicked out of physics at school for actually working on this. They didn't like the idea of me not learning what they were trying to teach me. And, well, Stephen and I got together while he was doing this lecture tour. We got talking for about a whole week, solid, close to 20 hours a day. And I filled his head full of as much information as I could pour out of my own head, trying to give him a glimpse of the way I think. Now, this confused him for a very long time, about 4 months. Finally, another 2 months down the track, he decided to fly me across over to Perth, because he lived right across the other side of Australia. So he paid my airfare, flew me over there for a week to get another dose. And he got it. So much so that for the next 3 months, he almost drove himself crazy trying to find the solution to one simple puzzle. The simple puzzle is, find me an opposite. That's what I said to him. I said, find me an opposite. Find me something that is opposite. Now, your first thing that comes to mind is black and white. Nope. That's not opposite, because they're colours. Positive and negative on a magnet. Nope. It's the one magnet. And so on and so on and so on. Now, after he puzzled with this and tried to work it out and kept trapping himself at every turn, he decided enough's enough. So he sold his house, he sold his boat, he sold his car, most of his belongings, bought a bus, converted it into a mobile home, drove right across the country with his family, and parked in my driveway for 6 weeks. Until finally he decided to get himself a house. Now he lives in Toowoomba. He's been living there for about the last 3 years, learning this. Now this, I didn't write. Stephen actually wrote the majority of the book because he decided that since I was teaching him this way of thinking, this different way of thinking, this three-dimensional way of thinking, this method on how to unravel any question, any situation, any problem, people had to know. So he said, we've got to write a book. And I said, no. A week down the track, he said, I've got to write a book. I said, no. He already started. Month down the track, we've got to write a book. No. 4 months down the track, finally I gave in. And I said, okay, we've got 3 months to write this thing. We're on a clock. I thought, putting the pressure on, he'll fold. We won't write the book. Great. I'll get out of it. I didn't. The book is here. Now, the book's called Q Mechanics. It's a step-by-step transition from the atomic model, the current atomic model, which science keeps praising all the time, to a new method of seeing things, which we have labelled or called, or however you want to term it, the matrix, which is the building blocks, the literal building block of the universe and everything around it. It explains step by step how things are made. No matter what you look at, you can figure out how it's made once you can get this way of thinking. Now, next stage up. During the lecture circuit that... oh, he's going to take a photo. I was nervous as hell up here. Okay, during the lecture circuit that Professor Searle was doing, Steve and John Thomas and Professor Searle came across another gentleman by the name of Lynn Eykamp, who runs 3 farms in Corindi in New South Wales, which is around about 8 hours from where I live. Now, they got interested in Professor Searle's work. So, Professor Searle was staying at my place while he was in Queensland. So they drove Lynn and his father drove all the way up to Queensland, to my place, to talk to Professor Searle. Well, one thing led to another, and after we published this book, we thought, Lynn might want a copy. So we sent him a copy. And then another one, and another one. I think he ended up with 10 different copies, or 10 of the same copy. Well, he liked what he saw and liked what he heard. So he called us up, and he says, come down. So we went down. Drove all the way down there, spent, I think it was close to 4 or 5 days with him. And we talked and we talked and we talked. Finally, he turned around and he says, okay, you've talked enough, now prove it. Prove what you say is real. So I said, okay, ask me a question. So he pondered for a little while. Then he asked me a question. He said, make me a device. Now, I'm not going to be quoted on this, because this was his words. He says, make me a device that'll cure just about anything. I don't know what he was thinking at the time, what raised that question or what, but that was the question he came up with. So I sat down, me being a smoker, sat down on his porch, lit a cigarette, smoked half the cigarette, put it out, walked inside, grabbed a pen and paper, sketched out the schematics for this. The designs have not changed, the measurements have not changed. The housing's changed a little. But he wanted something that will cure just about anything. So I gave it to him. Next was another device we have down the table called a polarizer. He said, I'm using heaps and heaps and heaps of superphosphate as fertilizer on my crops. And I said, well, okay, what's superphosphate? What's it made of? Me being a halfway through senior dropout, I didn't know these things. And I said, well, what's it do? He says, it induces nitrogen into the soil. I said, okay. So I designed up the polarizer to create natural nitrogen, natural airborne nitrogen within the water. Now, it doesn't take it from anywhere. It doesn't absorb it from anywhere. It simply makes it itself and puts it into the water. And we had this tested because we thought, well, okay, this is all good and fine, having something that has water flowing through it. Looks really pretty. Let's get it tested. So we had it tested. And I'm not too sure on the figures, but I think it came to something like 80 times the amount of natural airborne nitrogen in the water versus the other sample, the test sample. So there was another success. And the successes kept going. Every single thing that was asked was answered. And it all came from the one way of thinking. The simple, very simplistic way of thinking. Now, I'm not even going to start on it because, well, you guys can either grab the book or you can come to the workshop where I'll be going free for all, pulling out all the stops. Anyway, here we are. We have many different devices. We have many to come. Products, projects, things that we're doing. Now, one of the biggest questions we've been asked so far here is, why haven't we been stopped? If this stuff is so good, why haven't we been stopped? No, actually, not because we're in Australia. Australia is far worse a country as far as political and military goes than the US is, because you have so many people here in this country. It's very hard to keep tabs on absolutely everything and everyone that does anything. But in Australia, we have the entire population of LA across the same landmass as the US. So it's pretty easy to keep tabs on people and what they do. But luckily, with all my little contacts and favours that I had owed to me, very low people in very high places, I've been able to play a successful chess game and keep ourselves out of the loop. And so we'll keep building things as long as they don't encroach on particular things like energy, politics, religion. Another question we've been asked is, why don't we create a free energy device? Why don't I build the device in the back of the book? Personally, I don't like a bullet in my head. It's really cheap. It's a lot cheaper than doing anything else. If you start playing in the free energy field, you've got to be ready for the consequences that are going to follow. The consequences that are going to follow is not the government's shutting you down or anything like that. It's very simply a bullet's going to come out of nowhere and take you clean out, and that's the end of the story. So, why bother? I mean, there are fuel people, there are energy people, there are electricity, I mean, you name it. There's that many different fuel supplements out there. If you come up with something that generates power out of nothing, and I mean literally nothing, which this device in the back of the book does, it manufactures energy. It doesn't absorb it from the ether or anything. It manufactures it from nothing. Now, if I was to build that, I'd be dead. So, why build it? Build other things that they can't kill me for. Communication systems, transport systems. Well, the transport system's a bit of a problem, but we're working around that one. Health devices, agricultural devices, devices that can help bring the world back from where it's going. And it's going straight to hell. I mean, everyone here is, all of the exhibitors here are saying the exact same thing. The world's going to hell in a handbasket. This device will help it along a little, back the other way. This thing will help it along a little as well. And this will, and this will. Each device in its own right, each aspect of each treatment has its place. Ours is no better than the rest. Some work, some don't. I know, and many others know, that this thing works really, really well. So well that the boys and I have been putting on free baths with this thing. Okay, now you're probably wondering, okay, how do you use this thing? Big question. Now, I've only got the actual array system here. The power source is down at the table. This simply gets put into the bathtub. You run a bath, you put this in, it attaches up to the power supply. Uh-oh, power and water. Everyone's starting to shake. One of the biggest fallacies I've ever given you is electricity and water. AC and water does not mix because it's pulsed. It's a pulsed magnetic force which pushes down the line. It's like someone sitting there jackhammering you. Trust me, I know this. I've had my finger in the PowerPoint before. So, but there's another type of power. There's DC, direct current. No one's ever said anything, well, that I've heard of, in a long, long time. You can read it in the medical books back in the 19th century, the 1800s, that they used DC, generated DC, and copper and many other different elements and stuff to cure many things. Many, many things. But they won't let you know that now. Now I could probably go into the full conspiracy theory of how the medical community are such a tight-knit little band of old boys that they all look after each other and keep each other's pockets greased. But you all know that already. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. Well, it probably would be, but hey. Point is, they don't want any of this stuff really coming out heavily because they've got their drugs, they've got their things, they've got all their little potions and mixes and elixirs and injections and things that they stick in you. And that's the way they like it. And you keep paying a lot of money for this. The average, we worked out that the average health bill for an average family is something around the vicinity of $8,000 a year in Australia. And that's frightening. This doesn't cost $8,000. This lasts a lot longer than a year. This little thing, you put it in the bathtub, you run a bath, you plug it in the wall, turn the power on, relax back in the bath for half an hour, have a nice relaxing bath, do nothing, think whatever you feel like thinking, feel whatever you want to feel. Once you've been in there half an hour, you hop out, it's done. It's that simple. Now, it's not all fixed in one treatment, not by a long shot. Certain aspects of illness and problems can take ages with standard medicine, years, decades even. We've had results in hours, days, weeks on the outside. I think we've got 1 or 2 cases that have gone further than a couple of months. Now, I can't say anything about cancer, because I'm not permitted to say those sort of things. I can't say anything about life-threatening diseases, because I'm not allowed to say anything like that. Flesh-eating viri, anything like that. I can't say that this thing fixes those. I'm not allowed to, so I won't say it. I can't say that we've had 9 documented cases of cancer completely reverted. Completely no sign of it at all in a matter of weeks. I can't say that we've had golden staph, staphylococcus virus, which never leaves your system ever, completely removed in about 40 cases out of 40. I can't say that we've had wounds healing, burns regrowing the skin over the top. Well, actually, that one I think I can say. I'm not sure about that one, so I won't say it anyway. A friend of mine, Bruno, he's a graphic artist back in Toowoomba. He did a silly thing. He was making porridge for breakfast, pot of porridge. And I'm still trying to work out how he did this. But he knocked the pot and it splashed up and covered his entire arm from elbow down. He had 2nd to 3rd degree burns from the porridge because it stuck to him like hot wax. He went to the doctors. All he got was a cream to put on to try and ease the burning a little. Now, it was that bad that I really, really, really wish I had a camera handy at the time. He had a blister which covered the entire top of his hand that was about 1 inch high. And he had another one up his arm, and he had skin removed all over the place. Anyway, 3 days went past, and he's using this cream, and it's not working. And he rings me up for work reasons, for graphics reasons, asks me a bit of a question. I also do computer graphics. And he says, well, I need help with this and da-da-da. Oh, and by the way, I burnt my arm. And I said, well, how badly? He says, well, the doctor said it's 2nd to 3rd degree burns, and it's from the elbow down to the fingers. So he told me the storyline and everything like that, and I thought, okay. And I said, why the hell haven't you come over? You know what I've got. Oh, I didn't think it would work. Needless to say, I mean, you can't convince anybody unless they try it. So I said, get your ass, I don't know if I can say that on television, on this. I said, get your ass over here and put your arm in with this thing. So 3 hours later, mind you, he's 5 minutes away, 3 hours later, he turns up on my doorstep. So I got the unit out, got a little tub of water, put the unit in, put his arm in. Half an hour later, pulled his arm out to see how it was going. There's a white film over the top of the entire thing. There's no redness, there's no swelling. The swelling is all disappeared. And there's a white film over it. Very, very minute white film. So I took a sample of this on a slide, and put it underneath my microscope. I got a biological microscope, really nice thing, nice toy. And I had a look. It was new cells, living new cells. It was regrowing the skin. Now, I didn't believe this. I thought, no, I'm seeing things. Well, 6 days later, what burn? He has hair back on the arm, he has no scar, he has nothing. It's all gone. You could barely, if you really looked hard, you could pick up a slight bit of discoloration in the skin just around his hand area here. That was it. That was all there was. I mean, this is one case, which I really, really, really wish I had a camera at the time. But we have had many cases like this. We've had countless test cases we've done and things like that to prove to people that this thing works. But what we're doing here is we have these devices available to buy. They're not expensive. I mean, well, in consideration. They're $990 US. Reasonably cheap when you think about it. And if you want to prove it to yourself, you go down, you talk to Steve. He'll line you up with a bath, free, no cost, no obligation or anything like that. We'll dunk you in the bath, see how you go, and talk to you when you get out. It's that simple. I'm not going to try and convince you. Like, when you get out of the bath, I'm not going to say a word. I'm going to just say, how do you feel? That's it. Now we've got, I think, more than a dozen people have gone through already. And I've had reports left, right, and center of amazing things. I mean, one gentleman, Michael, he's floating around there somewhere. Oh, there he is over there. Michael took one home last night. Yeah, he offered to give us a credit card swipe and everything.
Terry, may I ask a question?
You can.
Does every time you get in the bathtub, it turn brown, what comes out of you?
Yes. Here's the good thing.
Repeat the
I've got a
question.
That's the only thing.
Okay.
The question.
What James is asking me is he's asking me, does the water turn brown all the time? Now, when you use this unit, what it does is it pulls all the crap out of your system. Doesn't matter what it is, toxins, leftover bits and pieces, no matter what it is. But it's not the unit pulling it out of your system, it's actually your body pushing it out. It's finally got the energy to push it out. So it purges it into the bath. And the water can tend to turn brown.
It gets less and less.
It does get less and less because your system gets cleaner and cleaner.
Right, okay.
So the more, or the clearer the water, the cleaner your system is. Pretty easy way to judge. Now hell, I took a bath before I came here. And it was pretty ugly brown. But I eat what I want, I do what I want, I smoke, I drink, I do whatever, I eat whatever I want. Anyway, I'm out of time. I've used up my half an hour. Thank you very much for listening to me and putting up with me.
Okay, thank you, Terry.
And come and see us.
Connie Shaw, will you come up here one more time so we can brief them on tomorrow? While she's doing that, remember that the bookstore is open now, and after Connie finishes here, we will be finished with this session, and it's workshop time tonight. If you wish to take part of a workshop, please sign up now so we can determine which room to use. The menu is at the door, and if you're about tonight's buffet. I'm going to ask you to remain seated for just 5 more minutes while Connie explains what we've got working for tomorrow night, so you might want to pick up something if you missed it in the time before. But Connie, would you do that, please? Tomorrow night we got a special healing session which may be of great interest to a number of you or other people as well.
Thank you, Dean. I don't think it'll take me 5 minutes to tell you about this. Tomorrow evening when I give the talk, it'll be at 8:10 and it will last until 9:30. I would like to invite everyone to bring an object, a sacred object that has comfort or meaning or inspiration for you. Now, if you're Jewish, as we said before, you can bring your yarmulke or prayer shawl, or if you're Catholic, you might want to bring a rosary or a picture of Jesus or Mary, or if you're a Protestant, you might want to bring a little Bible, and on and on. People that are recovering addicts or alcoholics might have a daily meditation book they would like to bring, or the big book. And these will be your personal articles you can keep in your pocket or purse or wallet. And if you're not aligned or affiliated with any particular spiritual expression, obviously just bring yourself in an open mind and an open heart. The reason that we're going to be doing this guided prayer and meditation at the end of the talk is that recently, in the past many months, perhaps even a year and a half, in giving public talks and workshops, even on mundane and worldly topics such as communication, people have reported that they were being healed, or that they were seeing angels, or their departed loved ones who had been killed in car wrecks, or that they were suddenly having a release of a spinal injury, or a frozen shoulder, or arthritis, or whatever. This was greatly surprising to us, and we know that God is the doer, and that's his business. You know, there are three kinds of business: your business, my business, and God's business. And most of us are so busy dabbling around in other people's business that we don't realize we have a lot of unfinished business of our own. So I don't care what sort of object you bring, but if you have something that's really special for you, this might help you get in a frame of mind at the end of the talk, so that when we do this guided meditation, anything might happen. I'm getting emails and faxes and letters and calls from people from India that are saying, we really enjoyed your talk and your workshop, and by the way, I was going to get divorced from my husband, and after that night we reconciled. And this has happened 4 or 5 times in various places that couples have reconciled. So we know that people are having different types of healings of relationships. They're letting go of burdens of unforgiveness. They're receiving physical healings, emotional, mental healings, and all sorts of things are happening. So we can't guarantee anything, obviously, because it's a great surprise to us that this even happens and is part of this life work. That sounds a little bit puffed up to call it a life work, because all we do is show up and do what we had planned to do, and God and angels and ascended masters do the rest. But I think you understand what I mean, that in this particular process together, if you have a particular request or a desire or a wish or a prayer for healing for yourself or a loved one, please bring a photograph of a loved one for whom you have their permission that you might pray for them for a healing. This also is happening, that hundreds of people have prayed for loved ones, and their loved ones have been healed long distance, many of whom were in comas or having surgeries or not expected to live. They certainly and suddenly did a turnabout. But these healings are not always instantaneous. Sometimes they take a few days or some weeks, and some of the more long-term situations have even taken a couple of months. And it's not my business. But I did want to let you know that we will be offering free pictures of Sai Baba that my husband offered to bring for people that are interested in those. Since many people that have read our book in the past few years, Mary's Miracles and Prophecies, have written us or told us that they have received tremendous healings by carrying the book, by placing it on their bodies, either closed or with a picture of Sai Baba against them. Women who were infertile have been able to bear children by saying a prayer while holding this book, and all sorts of extraordinary things have happened, which I will be telling you about tomorrow night. A picture isn't necessary. We know that you have and are everything that you have sought throughout all embodiments. You are divinity itself. You are masters in the making. You are great beings emerging into your role. The time for which you have taken up embodiment, this time is here. Each of you has a constituency. Each of you is surrounded by people and animals that look to you for comfort, mercy, inspiration, solace, tenderness, love, joy. The time is at hand. So we will be talking about Mother Mary's latest prophecies. We'll be talking about gifts of the Spirit, about 20 that are coming on the planet now that are new. Conventional gifts of the Spirit in this mighty, mighty river of planetary outpouring of gifts of the Spirit that's taking place now. And we'll be talking about all sorts of extraordinary, unspeakable blessings that are occurring. Are there any questions at this point about this particular topic? Bring something that's a sacred object that's meaningful to you. Come and enjoy the talk. You might want to bring a notebook. We'll have a lot of information. And then we'll just do our simple little process at the end. And you'll be free to go. And it's not my business what happens, but if anything delightful happens then or later, you could tell me and I'd be happy to hear about it, but not necessary. So God bless you all. We'll see you tomorrow night.
Thanks, Connie. Thanks. All right. Now, from now on tonight, the rest of the night, the exhibit area is free, open, and free to the public. Workshops will take place tonight, 6:30 to 9:30. There will be a video shown here at 7 o'clock for those who want to watch that. But all exhibit area can be open now and from now on, and as long as they would really care to stay open, probably 10 or 11 o'clock tonight. Tomorrow morning, first thing, you come back for your door prizes, which we already have a bunch. We'll see you in the morning and in between now and then. Make up your decisions and be with us.